system change. Companies usually change their systems for various reasons. Right? The company may change for business needs, or because technology has changed, or they want to improve their business processes, okay, or try to be more competitive for various reasons. Okay. And developing quality error-free software is a difficult, expensive, and time-consuming task. So whether system changes are major or minor, most companies go through a system development life cycle, SDLC, okay, which is 5-step processes. And sometimes when companies omit certain step, okay, there will be a disaster. Right? The new system may not work, or it's below expectation. So what are the 5 steps in SDLC? Alright, first we start with system analysis. Right, the first SDLC step is system analysis, where the information needed to be purchased, developed, or modified system is gathered. Right? In this step, we're going to do the following things. We're going to initiate investigation. We have a system survey, do the feasibility study, determine the information needs, and deliver system requirements. Then we have the second step is conceptual design. Right? During the conceptual design, the company decides how to meet users' needs. Right? We're going to identify and evaluate design alternatives, right? Develop design specifications and deliver conceptual design requirements. Then the third step is physical design. Right? In this step, we're going to design output database, right? Input programs, all these things. The next step is implementation and conversion. So we can implement the new systems. This constitutes the capstone phase. Okay. New hardware or software is installed, right? It's tested. Standards and controls, right, are established. So this is the final step. The final step is to deliver the operational systems to the organization. And also we have a final report to send to the Information Systems Steering Committee. So the final step is operations and maintenance. In this step, modifications are made if necessary, if problems arise. Okay. So it is important to note that throughout these 5 steps, okay, 3 activities are performed: planning, managing, and accessing. Okay, so have a brief test, and we're gonna move to the next. People. Who's involved in the SDLC? Right, first we have the Information System Steering Committee. Okay, this is a committee is at the executive level, and this committee plans and oversees the information system function and facilitates coordination with integration of systems activities. Basically, this committee sets the policies that governs the ALS and ensures top management participation, guidance, and controls. So it's a very important committee. As you can see, the report will eventually be sent to the Information Steering Committee. Okay. Next, we have the project development team. Right. It's going to plan and monitor the project progress. And we have the assistant analysts and the programmers. They're going to do the hard work to determine information needs, prepare specifications for programs, and programs is going to write and test programs accordingly. Right? So for the company, we also have the management. Top management are the most important roles is to provide support and to encourage the development project. And we also have users. Okay, the AIS users need to communicate their information needs to the system developers. They help design and test ensure complete and accurate processing of the data. And finally, we also have external players. So we're talking about customers, vendors. Okay, they may play a role in the system development. Planning. So as we said in a few slides before, planning, managing, and assessing are three important activities throughout the cycle. Okay. Proper planning provides for achieving goals and objectives. For system development, two types of plans are needed. A master plan, and then we have the project development plan. So a master plan is a long-range plan. The master plan is authorized by the steering committee. Okay, and in this master plan, they can outline priorities and also list the timetables. Basically, it's going to answer questions like what are the system will consist of, how it will be developed, who will develop, right? So these kind of questions. And for the project development plans, okay, it's very specific. So this is a basic building block of the information system planning. Okay. Each project development plan contains cost-benefit analysis, right? For example, development and operational requirements, human resources, hardware, software, financial resources requirement. So very specific plan. Right? Inadequate planning could be one of the reasons why a company may eventually fail with a development of a system. Planning techniques. So we're going to talk about two techniques for scheduling and monitoring system development. First, it's a program evaluation and review technique, PERT. Alright, so what is PERT? PERT requires that all activities and the precedent and the subsequent relationships among them be identified. So we're going to list all the activities, and they are basically linked. So this diagram shows all the activities, okay, required to finish the the bear project. Basically, we're going to make a toy bear in this project. And it lists all the required activities, times, and resources to complete the project. Okay. And with the PERT, we're going to find the critical paths. Okay. So what is the critical path? Critical path is the PERT requiring the greatest amount of time. Okay. Because to achieve the project, we have to complete all the activities. If one of the PERT that is requiring the greatest of time, and that is a critical path, okay? Because that is the path that takes most of the time. And if any activities on the critical path is delayed, then the whole project is delayed. That's why it's important. Alright, so to see how we're going to calculate critical paths, you can read these articles. Alright. So here we have a question test. Right? We get a project down. We have a lot of paths. So which one is a critical path, right? B, H, or C, E, J? Which one is a critical path, and how long it will take for the critical path? Answer will be posted at the end of the lecture. The next technique is the Gantt chart. Basically, this is a bar chart that organizes activities on the left-hand side and the project times scheduled with a bar drawn to show the progress, okay, to date for that particular activities. So the primary advantage of the Gantt chart is the ability to show graphically the entire schedule for a large complex project. Unlike the PERT, the disadvantage of this chart is it does not show the relationship among the project activities. Next, let's talk about the feasibility analysis. So a feasibility analysis is prepared during system analysis and updated as necessary during the development cycle. And the steering committee is going to use this study to decide whether to terminate a project or to proceed unconditionally or proceed if specific problems are resolved. And this feasibility study is prepared with input from management, accountant, right, system personnel, and users from many parties. There are 5 important aspects to be considered during a feasibility study. So we have the economic feasibility. Right? Basically, we're going to answer do the benefits of the new system justify the costs to implement, right? economically whether it's going to benefit the company. We also have the technical feasibility. So can we use existing technology, or can the system be developed using the existing technology? Right? The legal feasibility. Right? Does the new system comply with regulations, laws, contractual obligations? The scheduling feasibility. Can the system be developed in the time allotted? Then the operational feasibility. Do we have the people to design and implement a system? Right? Will people use a new system? These kind of questions. All right, so we can talk about capital budgeting. Basically, this is a part of the economic feasibility. Three capital budgeting techniques are often used. We have the payback period. Right, this is a calculated number of years required for net savings to equal the initial cost of investment. Obviously, the project with the shortest payback period is usually selected. NPV, net present value, we can estimate the future cash flow with discounted rates, and the project with highest positive NPV is usually selected. Another technique is internal rate of return, IRR. Basically, this is the interest rate that makes the present value of total cost equal the present value of the total earnings. The project with highest percent of internal rate of return usually are selected. So we're not going to go through the calculations. I believe you have learned these calculations from the previous classes. Okay. If not, you can read a textbook. We have a few examples to show those calculations. Right. So a short test. Then we move to the next slides. Behavioral issues. The behavioral aspect change are crucial because, even if we have the best systems, the system will fail without support of the people. So, why we have a behavioral problem? First, people fear the change. People, it's typical that people fear the unknown. They fear about losing their jobs when the new system is put into use, those kind of things. And if the top management is not supportive, then we also have the behavioral issues from employees. Or there could be bad experience from the previous information system changes, or it could be from poor communications. So you can read the rest of the reasons why we have the behavioral issues. And if we have these problems, the new system will fail. And here, because there are so many reasons why employees resist the change, it usually comes in one of the three forms. Aggression. These are the behaviors that are intended to produce errors with the new systems or weaken the effectiveness of the new systems. Projection. Usually people is going to blame the new system for everything that goes wrong. And then avoidance. Going to ignore the new systems in hopes that it will eventually go away. All right. And also, when we find problems, we can also have solutions. How to prevent behavioral problems. And here we list, right, a bunch of guidelines that it can help us avoid behavioral problems from employees. Right, for example, we have the management support. It's going to provide resources and the motivations. Right, the system is to satisfy the user's needs. Right, we're going to have the users get involved, right, and communicate well. All right, and of course, provide training. Right, and you can go through the long list on your own. Now let's talk about the development cycle, development life cycle, the phase 1. Step 1, system analysis. So when a new or improved system is needed, a written request for system development is prepared. Then we have the 5 steps in the analysis phase. And also we're going to talk about the objectives. Okay. During the first step, we have the initial investigation. Initial investigation is conducted to screen project. So during the initial investigation, the exact nature of the problem under review must be determined, right? And the project scope also must be determined. So if a project is approved, we have the proposal to conduct system analysis is prepared. So the next step is system survey. So this is an extensive study of the current accounting information system. Right? The objective of the system surveys, right, is to study the present system to gain a thorough understanding of how it works. Right, the objective of the system survey is to understand what we have, right, basically, and what we want to have, and also, right, whether it's feasible, right, the feasibility. So, right, how to get the data we want? We have several techniques. Right, we talk about the data collection. How are we going to collect data during this system survey? We're going to have the interviews. Basically, the interviews is going to gather answers to why questions. Right, for each interviews, we need to make appointment, right? So that's for sure. Explain the purpose beforehand. Indicate the amount of time needed and arrive on time. And before each session, we need to study the interview's responsibility and list points that we want to cover. Right? So we're going to put each interviewee at ease by being friendly, courteous and tactful. So we're going to ask questions that deals with the person's responsibility, right? How the persons interact with the systems, how the system might be improved. and the person's information needs. So we're gonna let the interviewee do most of the talking, okay? And we need to pay special attention to non-verbal communication because of the subtle overtone, and body languages can be as significant as direct response to questions. Okay, we take note, right? And right, that's it. So that's something about interviews. We can also collect data from questionnaires, right? For interviews, we can ask very specific questions. We can tailor questions, but the problem is we can only get one or two, or only few people get interviewed. The amount of data collected is limited. But for questionnaires, it's an inexpensive way to collect a lot of data from a lot of people, right? So when the amount of information to be gathered is well defined, basically, we can get it from and also we need the information from a lot of people. Then we can use questionnaires, and the questionnaires can be anonymous, right? It's not time consuming, it's relatively inexpensive, but the problem with the questionnaires is we cannot have very in-depth discussions, right? We cannot ask follow-up questions, and questions sometimes cannot be clarified because people don't know how to answer those questions, maybe. A third way to collect data is from observations, right? We can verify information gathered from other approaches, from observations. Basically, we're going to go to the company. From there, we're going to see how a system actually works, right? So this is going to give us a greater understanding of the system. The problem is it's time consuming, right? Could be very expensive. Takes a lot of time to understand how the system works. Right? And the fourth way to get the data is from the system documentation. So the documentation describes how the system is intended to work. Yeah, again, it's time consuming and may not be available or easy to find. Right, we have a short question. So basically, based on these activities, which data gathering method is more appropriate? Okay. And then assume you are interviewing for the system development. And now here's a question in your mind, right? Accounting sees an increase in the number of dollar value of bad debt write-offs. So you have no clue how this happens. We want to understand it. So now you're going to do an interview with managers. What questions, right, should you ask during the interview to understand the problems? Right, list a few questions you want to ask. Of course, you cannot ask tons of questions, right? That's you have a time limit. So list the most important questions 3 or 4 important questions you want to ask that's going to help you understand the issue. Right, again, the answers will be posted at the end of the lecture. Information needs and system analysis report. Right, if we go back to the steps, right, we have skipped after the system surveys, we skipped the feasibility study. Right, we talked about that in the previous slides. Then now we are right here. Information needs and system requirements. So once the project is deemed feasible, we're going to determine information needs of users. So it's important to determine the system objectives so that analysts and the users can focus on those elements most vital to the AIS success. So a system's success often depends on the project team's ability to cope with the constraints of the organization faces. So what are those constraints when we design the systems? Right, we have the government agency requirements. Right, management policies and guidelines. So all these are the constraints. So we have 4 strategies used to determine the AIS requirements. I first ask users what they need. This is very straightforward. You can also analyze external systems. If a solution already exists, okay, you don't have to reinvent wheel. Can examine existing systems. Determine if existing systems or modules are used as intended. Maybe the existing system is fine, just we didn't use it properly, right? That's possible. And then number 4, we can create a prototype, okay? When it is difficult to identify requirements, people say, okay, we need something new or something good, but they don't tell us what is new, what is good, right? So it's difficult to identify the requirements. Basically, we can, as a developer, we can give them a prototype system. So with a prototype, right, user is going to identify what they like or dislike about a system, and they're going to send you a request for change. And finally, we have the last step is a system analysis report. Right, this provides management with the findings of the analysis from this stage. Right, during this system analysis stage, we have the goal and stop decisions made 3 times during the system analysis. During the initial investigation stage, during the feasibility study stage, and upon the completion of the analysis stage, you can have the go or no-go decision made by us. Alright, try these multiple choices. Alright. So once we decide that we need a new system, we have 3 ways to obtain a new information system. Right? We can purchase a new system or rent it. We can develop in-house, or we can outsource to outside organization. So let's talk about these. So first, we can purchase. Now it's really easy to purchase systems. For example, right? Many large organizations, right? They purchase ERP package. So when we purchase, we have three things to consider. We have the canned software. Right, canned software is basically simple words that universal version, right, of the software. So it's sold on the open market to a broad range of users with similar requirements. So if you don't have a special needs, the canned software is going to work for you. The problem with the canned software, it may not meet all the company's needs. Okay? So, if you want to if you have special needs, we're going to talk about that. You have to have the in-house development, develop it, right? We also have the turnkey systems. Turnkey systems is some companies combine the software and hardware together in one package. That's turnkey systems, right? And in more recent years, with the internet, we're going to see more and more ASPs, application service providers. Okay, basically, the ASPs, they host web-based software on their computers. Okay, and they're going to deliver services through internet to clients. So more and more information systems are using these provided by these ASPs. Right, to purchase. First, let's talk about to purchase. It applies also how to rent. To purchase, we're going to select vendor. Okay, we're going to request for proposal that meet needs. You're going to evaluate those proposals. Then top vendors are invited to give a demonstration of how their system is going to work for us. Okay, then we're going to make final selections based on some criteria. Alright, so we can also choose to develop software in-house. The advantage is obvious, right? You're going to have something that other people don't have. It can give us some significant competitive advantage. Right? In fact, some of those big companies, right, they have in-house developed their systems. But there are also risks with developing software in-house. Right? For sure, it requires significant amount of time, and it's very complex. Right? And we may not have sufficient planning. Right? We may not have adequate communication cooperations. We may not have qualified staff to do the work. So a lot of things is going to prevent companies developing their software in-house. And end-user computing is become popular now. So end-user computing focuses on end users in control of creating and implementing simple systems instead of the function occurring in the information system department. For example, as an accountant, we can find a way or design a simple program to retrieve information data from the company's database. Okay? You can use them to prepare schedules, for example, or make a list. Those are called end-user computing. Right? Advantage is obvious. It's very flexible, which allows end users to control, right? To create, control, and implement. So it's going to satisfy the end users' needs for sure. And the disadvantage, obvious, is lack of testing, right? And it's poorly controlled, poorly documented, and I think the most reasons is most of the many of us are not qualified, right? Are not that capable to to operate the system. Then we have the outsourcing. Outsourcing is hiring outside companies to handle all or part of the organization's data processing activities. So there are basically two types of outsourcing, right? I can buy, right, my clients' computers and hire my clients' employees, so they're gonna work for me. But in more cases, it's just the so-called client-server agreement, right? We're gonna outsource a particular service or a segment of it business, or just a particular function to the outside companies. Right? For example, companies may outsource its data processing operations, right, to companies like IBM, right, or Microsoft. So let's talk about the benefits of outsourcing. Right? Outsourcing is a business solutions. Right? Outsourcing is a very viable strategies and economic business solutions because it allows companies to concentrate on their core businesses, and it is going to better to get assets utilization to reach its efficient point, right? So I don't have to spend millions of dollars in there. For example, the IT equipment. And overall, it's going to give me low costs, right? And because those companies are experienced, right, it's going to save time, take less time to develop. But also we have risks of outsourcing. Right, for many reasons, outsourcing project may fail. Right, for example, it's not prepared properly, right? And sometimes we think that outsourcing will solve deeper problems, but in fact, it will not. Right? Or we may have entered into an ill-defined agreement that do not meet our expectations. So for many reasons, outsourcing is also risky. Alright, so here we list all the disadvantage of outsourcing, and you can read on your own. Alright, so next we talk about the Business Process Management Systems, BPMS. BPMS is a systematic approach to continuously improving and optimizing an organization's business process. And the Business Process Management Systems, BPMS, automates and facilitates business process improve with the following things, okay? And the business process management systems are process-centered. Okay, therefore it's different from the ERP system. ERP system is data-centered. Okay, that's a major difference between these two. But most ERP systems have integrated EPM. Or it should be BPM. Okay, so BPM. the business process management often is a part of the ERP system. So a BPMS can improve internal controls by authorizations. A BPMS uses the organization's business process rules to determine the correct person to perform a task and authorizes that person to perform it. And there strengths and segregation duties. And we have application controls, and it provides audit trail. So, right, we talk about prototyping, right? Prototyping is a system design approach. Right? This is a way to create a simplified model of an AIS. Then we get feedback from users. Right? It is used in development stages. When there's uncertainty, meaning the users may be unable to specifically define their needs, right? They don't know what they want. And the tasks are not well structured and inputs and outputs are unknown. These things happen, better to have a prototyping. Okay, and we'll list the advantage and disadvantage with the prototyping. All right. So that's we have talked about all these just to finish the first phase, right, of the system development lifecycle. That's the system analysis. Then we briefly talk about the rest of the processes. Okay. So we're not going to cover the details for the rest of the processes. So the second phase is conceptual system designs. Right? In this stage, the developer is going to create a general framework for implementing users' requirements and solving problems identified in the analysis stage. And the next phase is the physical system design. So we're going to design output, what kind of report we need. Right, we're going to design a file in a database, design input. Again, what kind of form we have. What do we need for a computer screen input? Then we're going to program, design the program, the procedures, and finally control design. And the fourth phase is system implementations. Going to have the implementation plan. Select and train people. Right? You have the complete documentations and test the systems, and then we're going to convert to the new systems. Right? When we convert, we can have a direct conversions. Right? We're going to terminate the old systems and we're going to turn on the new one. Or we can have a parallel conversion, which is common. So at certain stage, both the old and new systems are there simultaneously for a period. Okay, then we're going to slowly turn off the old systems to make sure everything works. Or we have the phase-in conversion, which we have the gradual replaces. We're going to gradually replace elements of the old systems with a new one. Okay. And the final phase is operations and maintenance. We're going to conduct post-implementation reviews and modify if needed. Okay. All right. So here's the answers for the questions. All right. Pretty much for lecture 6.